Once upon a time, in a small village called Ndola, there lived a young woman named Chipo. Chipo was a beautiful, intelligent, and strong-willed woman who was well respected in her community. She had a loving husband named Tafadzwa, and they had a happy and fulfilling life together. However, their peaceful life was shattered when a group of soldiers from a nearby militia came to the village. The soldiers, led by their cruel commander, General Mwansa, had a reputation for terrorizing villages and taking whatever they wanted, including women and resources. One day, General Mwansa came to Chipo's house and demanded that she cook for him and his soldiers. When Chipo refused, the general became enraged and beat her. He then dragged her to a nearby hut and forcibly had sex with her. Chipo was devastated and humiliated, but she knew she had to find a way to get revenge. A few days later, General Mwansa came back to the village to check on his troops. He saw Chipo working in the fields and decided to take her again. He grabbed her and tried to force her to go with him, but Chipo refused to go quietly. She struggled and fought with all her might, scratching and biting the general wherever she could. In his attempt to subdue her, General Mwansa made a critical mistake. He bent down to pick her up, and in that moment, Chipo saw her opportunity. She opened her mouth wide and clamped down on the general's testicles with her strong jaws. She bit down as hard as she could, and she could feel the general's testicles squishing between her teeth. The general let out a scream of pain and released Chipo, who fell to the ground, coughing and gasping for breath. She knew she had to get away as quickly as possible, so she staggered to her feet and ran towards her house. Chipo's husband, Tafadzwa, had been out in the fields when he heard the commotion. He rushed back to the village and found his wife lying on the ground, her face pale and her clothes torn. He carried her back to their house and cleaned her up, but he could see that something was wrong. He asked her what had happened, and Chipo hesitated for a moment before telling him. Tafadzwa was furious. He wanted to go after General Mwansa and exact revenge, but Chipo begged him not to. She knew that violence would only lead to more violence, and she didn't want any more innocent people to get hurt. Instead, she suggested that they leave the village and start a new life somewhere else. Tafadzwa reluctantly agreed, and the next day they gathered their belongings and set off for a new village called Kafue, which was many days' journey away. As they walked, Chipo's injuries began to heal, but she couldn't shake the memory of what had happened. In Kafue, Chipo and Tafadzwa started a new life. Chipo became a healer, using her knowledge of herbs and traditional remedies to help the people of the village. Tafadzwa became a farmer, and they built a small but happy life together. However, Chipo's past continued to haunt her. She often had nightmares about General Mwansa, and she began to withdraw from the people of the village, afraid that they would find out what had happened and judge her. One day, a young woman named Mabel came to Chipo for help. She had been raped by a group of men from a neighboring village, and she was pregnant as a result. Chipo was horrified to hear Mabel's story, and she knew she had to do something to help her. Chipo talked to Tafadzwa, and they decided to take Mabel in and help her raise her child. They also decided to teach self-defense classes to the women of the village so that they could protect themselves if they were ever attacked. The classes were a huge success, and soon women from all over the village were coming to Chipo and Tafadzwa for help. They taught the women how to defend themselves using their hands, feet, and even teeth if necessary. As the women of the village became stronger and more confident, they began to stand up to the men who had been oppressing them. They demanded equal rights and fair treatment, and they refused to be silent anymore. The village became a model for other villages in the area, and soon, women all over the region were demanding change. Meanwhile, Chipo's reputation as a healer grew, and people began to come to her from far and wide for help. She used her knowledge and skills to heal the sick and injured, and she became a respected figure in the community. One day, a messenger arrived in the village with a letter from General Mwansa. The general was dying, and he wanted to make amends for the terrible things he had done. He asked Chipo to come to him and forgive him for his sins. Chipo was hesitant at first, but she knew that forgiveness was an important part of healing. She agreed to go to the general and help him find peace before he died. When Chipo arrived at the general's camp, she found him lying in a bed, weak and frail. He begged her to forgive him for what he had done to her, and she saw the genuine remorse in his eyes. She forgave him, and she helped him to find peace before he died. After the general's death, Chipo returned to her village, where she continued to teach self-defense classes and heal the sick. She and Tafadzwa had a happy and fulfilling life together, and they raised Mabel's child as their own. The village of Kafue became a shining example of what could be achieved when women were treated with respect and given the opportunity to be strong and independent. And Chipo, the brave woman who had once chewed the testicles of a powerful general, became a symbol of strength and resilience for women all over the world.
Please subscribe to my channel Lessons of Life and press the bell notification icon.